Roy, can you please get me, as promptly as possible, that horn of doom from Inception? Because we have a number of things to get to today. Let's play it for the audience here, play it for Billy Corben so that he knows what the sound is when he has to stop talking. We're putting him on a timer because he's too much of a fire hose. There's too much to cover here. He hasn't been here for 2 weeks, and if I get him going on one topic, he's going to just talk about that one topic, and we're not going to get to the other 15. So this is the horn that shuts Billy up after a minute. He's got to stop. You don't have to stop at exactly that minute. The bell on PTI, they allow a little bit after that, but don't make me hit you with a second horn of doom from Inception. I've got a cowboy hat here, a white cowboy hat filled with the topics. Are you ready, Billy Corben? Because we've got a lot of them to get to. You've missed a lot by missing a week.
All right, what do we got?
DeSantis's election police falsely arrest voters. It doesn't say on here that even the cops doing the arresting on their cameras are heard saying, I don't know why I'm doing this. This seems stupid. So let's begin the minute now.
This is something we have covered in the past. The governor, Ron DeSantis, having this press conference about how, oh, my elections police, this is only the beginning, the opening salvo of all of this elections fraud that happened. The problem is it was all bullshit. And what they've now released is the body cam video of the arrests of these poor folks, these convicted felons who were told by the state that they were allowed to vote, they were cleared to vote. There are local election supervisors at the county level told them, the state vetted them and approved them. They got voter registration cards. They went out and voted, and then they got arrested for going out and voting. Of the 19 that were arrested, 12 are Democrats, at least 13 are black. This is just modern day Jim Crow. This is an effort to scare people from going and exercising their rights to vote. This is pure disenfranchisement. It's harassment. It is unconstitutional. It's outrageous. And I think the best thing we could do is go to the video.
So apparently, I guess you have a warrant.
For what?
I'm not sure.
For voter stuff, man.
For voters.
It's what it is. I think the agents with FDLE talked to you last week about some voter fraud, voter stuff, when you weren't supposed to be voting, maybe.
I didn't.
So
What are they talking about?
that's
man?
what
Why is they-
we're not the case agents, but what you got to do. So
A bond. I didn't do it.
Okay, so ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest.
For what?
It's for voter fraud.
good. How are you, sir?
Right?
Oh my God! Hold on.
Wait.
Let me tell my husband.
We're telling him he's right here.
Right here. So if you can put your hands behind your back, please.
Oh my God!
Do
So
not move.
ultimately, ma'am, you have a warrant. Okay. The
What?
warrant. Hold on. Listen. I know you caught off guard. I understand. Right. So you have a warrant. It's for voter fraud. Okay. Hear me out. It's an ROR. You know what an ROR is?
Oh my God!
You go in, you get booked, and then they're going to release you from booking.
You can go right out.
You're going to be right back out. Okay?
Right back
But you have a warrant.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm like voter fraud. I voted, but I ain't commit no fraud.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't know exactly what happened with it, but you do have a warrant. That's what it's for. Okay?
Oh my God!
Yeah, so I don't know what happened with that, but...
I got out. The guy told me that I was free and clear to go vote or whatever because I done my time.
Yep.
I was free.
But the warrant was just made yesterday, so...
The guys talked to me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. I don't know, ma'am. I honestly couldn't tell you, okay? So I got to do some paperwork, and the quicker I can get the paperwork done, the quicker I can get you there, okay?
Hey, unfortunately, you got a warrant out, okay?
Warrant?
Yes, sir. Want to put your hands behind your back for me?
Well, no, but no one ever really explained all that much to me. I told the guys when they came out here that I was at the driver's license place getting my new driver's license. Yeah. The guy there asked me, he says, hey, can you vote? He says, hey, are you registered to vote? I said, no, I'm a convicted felon. I'm pretty sure I can. He goes, well, are you still on probation? I said, no. I got off probation like a month ago. He goes, well, then you can probably vote. Hey, just fill out the form, and if you can vote, then they'll give you a card. If you can't vote, then you won't. And I'm like, all right.
And there's your defense. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
That sounds like a loophole to me.
Well, we can hope.
Yes, sir. Will do.
That's excellent right there, Billy. You almost did it within the time there. You're talking too fast. You already talk too fast. So this is not encouraging to you to talk faster is not a good idea.
Anybody listening to this podcast at 1.5 times or 2 times
please
is going to
don't
have
do that. You'll make yourself insane. Let's move on. That's the cackling laughter you will hear in the asylum in the background as your life deteriorates. Let's grab another one here from the white cowboy hat. Florida law enforcement fails to participate in FBI annual crime report.
Yeah, so as you hear from so many of our local and state officials about how crime is down in the city or crime is down in Miami or the state of Florida, we don't actually know because the state of Florida has not been participating as they're supposed to with the FBI. Last year in Florida, only 2 of the 757 police departments provided crime data to the FBI that could be used in this annual report, and those were the Seminole and Miccosukee tribes, which those 2 agencies cover less than 1% of the state population. And in fact, the federal government since 2015 has given the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at least $18 million to develop a comprehensive plan to expand their current capacity to report this data, and yet we're failing to do so. So they could claim all they want to claim about crime being down and Florida being safe and Miami being safe. The truth of the matter is they don't appear to have the data, and if they have it, they are not reporting it to the federal government.
Wow, he didn't even have have a minute there. Look at this. I like this new system that we have here. I should point out to the audience that we have an assortment of topics in this cowboy hat that are, some of them are Miami, some of them are Florida. We've started just with the state of Florida. There's plenty for everybody here if you care about this peninsula. Hurricane Ian may push Florida real estate out of reach for all but the super rich. Florida solar community endured Hurricane Ian with minimal damage. I did read about that.
That's 2.
I don't know
that's
why
2
there are
topics.
2. I don't know why there are 2 on one sheet of paper.
Because the Hurricane Ian related?
So you will get 2.
You want to go twice as fast?
2 minutes, not twice as fast. You will tackle the first one first. Hurricane Ian may push Florida real estate out of reach for all but the super rich.
Again, we've touched on this in the past, but now the national media is covering it. Wall Street Journal, New York Times. Privately insured losses from Hurricane Ian are expected to be at close to $67 billion, not including flood insurance, putting Ian close to 2005's Hurricane Katrina, which was the most expensive disaster in United States history. And the data now makes it clear that Ian is part of a trend, the New York Times reports. Climate change is making hurricanes and other disasters, as we've talked about on this show, more destructive, and then pushing the cost of home insurance until it's out of reach for many, if not most, people and Floridians. So the more violent storms, flooding, wildfires in states like Louisiana, California, Florida are causing insurers to pull back from those markets. And now we see in Ian's aftermath how climate change is increasingly eroding the financial underpinnings of modern American life, which is to afford homeowners insurance and, sold separately here in the state of Florida, flood insurance. And you can't get a mortgage without at least homeowners insurance. And so we're seeing a situation, even now in those markets devastated by Hurricane Ian, we have rich speculators coming in looking to spend $50 million a pop to buy up these devastated properties before they're even remediated and brought out from underwater, which is just going to create another situation of where home ownership is absolutely impossible for average middle class and working class Americans.
I was building a home here, my dream home, and the reason I'm not building it now is because of that. I don't believe that I will be able to insure that home. I've had to stop the permits and everything else because I don't believe that in the present climate it's going to be an insurable home.
You have to, A, be able to afford to insure it if you can even get insurance for it. And really the idea is rich people can afford to self-insure. So if you can't afford to self-insure, you are...
I think that we just screwed this up because I believe Roy gave you 2 minutes there. It felt like it was 2 minutes.
Wait, you're
for
supposed
a
to call
topic.
time. Who's supposed to call time?
No, that's Roy's fault. But he also cut this poorly. He put 2 topics on here.
You did not double space. Everything was double spaced except for those 2.
This is my fault now.
These are clearly 2 different stories. It's obviously 2 different stories. Regardless, the next one, I don't know why you got 2 minutes there. Florida solar community endured Hurricane Ian with minimal damage. I read this story and and I did not know that you could go ecologically friendly and minimize hurricane damage.
So I listen, this place is called Babcock Ranch. It calls itself America's first solar-powered town. According to Babcock Ranch, which is a development, they're putting out their own publicity on this. So what I'm saying is let's be slightly skeptical. But what they are saying is that despite the fact that they are just 12 miles northeast of Fort Myers, the area of which, Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, the Barrier Islands were devastated by Hurricane Ian. This place, with 2,000 homes in this neighborhood, they did not flood the homes because the streets are designed to take the brunt of the impact of rainwaters and floods, and they did not lose electricity. That's what they're claiming, and basically saying that when you take a state that is by and large powered by Florida Power and Light, powered by more traditional, fossil fuel driven.
Wow, you see, I think what's happened here is that because he did 2 minutes last time, you got a little arrogant. You said, I got plenty of room, and now look at what happened.
I was reconditioned to think that I just had all this runway, and I fell off the end of the flat
You're
earth.
on your toes there.
I fell right off the end of the flat earth.
Ethics board says Miami Commissioner Diaz de la Portilla abused power.
Do we have like a shocker sound effect?
Well,
Do we
it
have
seems like I thought Diaz de la Portilla was Spanish for abuses power. The way we've talked about him on...
I don't know. You're bilingual.
The way that we've talked about this person is always around the abuse of power.
That is correct. And in fact, we did a hilarious bit, which I think we should flash back to right now, about this very case where Diaz
You have to give us a pause in order to have a flashback.
Do we have a harp? Is there a harp sound effect? We need a harp.
I'll add it in there.
All right. Thank you. This is producing on his toes, ladies and gentlemen. So Alex Diaz La Portilla, this notoriously corrupt, drunk on the dais. The guy has come to work at city commission meetings off his ass. This guy has a girlfriend, let's say, named Jenny Nilo. And Jenny Nilo, of course, went to jail for fraud.
Of course.
Because Miami. And because she's on probation, she needs a job. And so he hooked her up with a no-show job at the city's redevelopment agency, the CRA. Not a city job, but a city agency. And despite the fact that she wasn't employed by the city, she started driving around in a city-owned vehicle, but not just driving around in it, drinking and driving. The police surveilled her because she had this ghost job, this no-show job, where she kept getting raises when nobody else in the office was because she was DLP's girl. And they followed her to a liquor store. The flashback should fill in some of these blanks, but she was drinking in the car. Then she went to DLP's house where she disappeared for 3 hours, drinking more with him. They pulled her over. They did not do a breathalyzer test or a roadside DUI test. And they questioned her. She admitted to drinking. She admitted to drinking and driving, a major liability issue in this car. She got fired from that job, and DLP hired her to a no-show job in his commission office, where she still works and gets paid by the city taxpayer. And now what the ethics board is saying is he probably abused his power by doing some of this. And so I anticipate him getting a smack on the wrist, which will not sound as intense as the...
Well, you're not respecting the sound of doom. You went far over there, and we're trying to rein you in unsuccessfully.
Give you an extra 30 seconds.
Hang on. Here's what I'll do, though. Whatever the next subject is, I will bank the time. I will make the time up that I have. That I have
make the rules around here. You don't wear this white cowboy hat.
So what? You want 30 seconds on this next one? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I'll do it in less, so that to make up for my OT.
We're not doing this by your rules. You get a minute, and you can go a few words over if you want to, but you're going to have to harness yourself because we need to do better. We need to rein you in a little bit.
What's next?
The next one is Kanye endorses Miami Mayor Francis Suarez for president.
Oh, Christ almighty.
Well, it looks like Francis Suarez has the anti-Semitic bipolar rapper and crypto-fascist voting bloc all locked up. What's next?
DeSantis relaxes voting rules. I did read about this. He's only relaxing voting rules for Republican-leaning precincts.
Well, where else would he would he relax them?
Well, I mean, in the interest of
understand.
relaxing voting rules, I would think you would just relax voting rules with some equality. I'm somebody who believes that perhaps we should do this equitably.
So you'll remember we had one of the cleanest, most problem-free elections back in 2020, and irregardless, the Florida legislature decided to pass a whole bunch of crazy rules, limiting drop boxes, limiting vote by mail, creating all sorts of impediments to entry to disenfranchised voters in the state of Florida. And now, by executive order, Ron DeSantis has made some of those magically disappear, and not for a bad reason. Obviously, there are hurricane-torn areas of the state that need a little bit more help, and so he eased the voting rules for about 1 million voters in Lee County, Charlotte, and Sarasota. These are all counties that Hurricane Ian hit hard that all reliably vote Republican. Meanwhile, Orange County, a Democratic-leaning area which experienced historic flooding from the storm, they received no voting exceptions by Ron DeSantis.
Billy, I want you to enjoy with me just how incredibly horseshit and cheap the production on this particular endeavor is. What I have just
This is our most ambitious episode ever, I think.
What I have just pulled out of the cowboy hat, inexplicably, is the last thought to the previous one, which just says, for some Hurricane Ian victims. So
You double
you double space. You're again getting accused of Roy's mistake.
Because the producer didn't read.
Because Roy didn't read. He just
it.
cut up things and is now blaming you. I have a piece of paper here that just says Hurricane Ian.
Roy Scissorhands. Are you serious?
Yes, Roy. Like, what
the fuck
is
is that?
this? What kind of garbage is this? You've given me pure garbage in here. Florida abortion ban.
That's one.
Okay, but
That's
it
a
looks
thing.
like a phrase that's just by itself. I don't believe that these papers are cut correctly anymore. I don't trust our system.
Wow.
I don't trust our system either, and you're about to have even less trust in our system after I tell you about this next story. Florida, as we've discussed, has a 15-week abortion ban with absolutely...
Roy, I don't know why you're laughing at your incompetence.
Because my incompetence is high hilarity.
I am confused by why it is you're presenting something that is making this hard to read.
Oh, wait, is this eating into my time?
No, it is not.
Has the clock stopped and we paused the clock?
Start the clock now.
Oh, okay. All right. Florida, the state of Florida has an abortion ban, a 15-week abortion ban with absolutely no exceptions, not for rape, not for incest, not for the health and safety of the pregnant woman, not for human trafficking, and not one but 2 middle school girls were forced to flee the state in order to get medical care, in order to get abortions, one of whom, a middle school girl, was a victim of incest, was carrying the child of a family member. The reports did not specify who the family member was, but she was impregnated as a result of incest and could not get the health care she needed in the state of Florida, so had to flee the state. They went at least 2 or 3 states away. Planned Parenthood helped arrange their travel, and they were accompanied by family members.
This is terrible timing. I'm so sorry. This is wrong. It's just wrong at this point. What we're doing with this, you're in the middle of a heartbreaking story, and I can see on your face sometimes when you get a little extra outraged, when you get a little extra pissed off.
This is all a little extra, Dan.
I'm going to give you a little extra time on this one. Finish what you were saying.
I think what I'm going to finish with is throw to a clip of Val Demings from this week's debate against Marco Rubio, a man who not only supports an abortion ban with no exceptions in the state of Florida, but supports an abortion ban with no exceptions at the federal level, which would mean that these young middle school girls wouldn't even be able to flee 2 or 3 states away to abort children of their family members who raped and impregnated them.
Now, as a police detective who investigated cases of rape and incest, no, Senator, I don't think it's okay for a 10-year-old girl to be raped and have to carry the seed of her rapist. No, I don't think it's okay for you to make decisions for women and girls. As a senator, I think those decisions are made between the woman, her family, her doctor, and her faith.
Oh, yeah. See, he's keeping, producing.
That debate, I don't know how much of it you watched with Marco Rubio, but I did feel like a principal was scolding an 8-year-old.
Oh, yeah. And like she reminds me so much of my principal in high school. And I felt like I was over her knee with a ruler. Oh, hang on. Production values. Like that. Like just.
How long has
spanking.
Rubio been in office? Is it now 24 years?
In government since you can be back from his yokel West Miami days and his bagman David
I'm
Rivera.
talking about in this. How long has he been in the position that he's in right now?
Oh, as a senator?
Yes.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Oh my!
It's
God.
20 plus years, is it not?
Well, they're 6-year terms, and so he's now. I mean, this is his third or fourth.
I thought it was 24 years. I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He has never had a job. He has never had a job in the private sector. He has never had to create a job. He has never. What did Val Demings say? Oh fuck! Hang on. What was the? Hang on. Give me a second. Sorry. Oh, Val Demings told him the only thing Marco Rubio's ever run is his mouth, and all of it. It was just like one. It was pretty brutal. Incidentally, I don't know that it will matter. I don't know that I think that perhaps the tribal politics, racism, and internalized misogyny of Florida voters will probably decide this thing the wrong way. Because I think it is not going to be the Democrats here in the state of Florida. That is an evergreen remark, by the way. But I thought she absolutely brutalized Marco Rubio, and this is the reason, incidentally, that you have not seen Marco Rubio do a debate or do a town hall with constituents since he got embarrassed on national television by high school kids. You'll remember the Parkland survivors. Okay, high school kids who basically did the same thing to him years ago that Val Demings did, bent him over their knee and spanked him repeatedly. And he never did another town hall. He never met his constituents again. He basically just showed up to Trump rallies where obviously, it's kind of a gimme. And he's awkward. He's embarrassing. He does not have a command of the facts. He does not have any policy. You have to understand, this is the crazy thing. People are going to vote for a man who will and has acknowledged publicly that he will end Obamacare, end Medicare, end Medicaid, end Social Security, end abortion rights and women's bodily autonomy. All of these policies, by the way, are some of the most popular policies in the history of this country. They all poll better than any of these politicians. They all poll better than the president, which isn't saying very much at this point in his term, but they poll better than Marco Rubio. They're more popular than even he will be if and when he is reelected next month. So, but they've admitted that they're going to end these policies that help the middle class, that help the working class, that help the infirm, the handicapped, the young, our most vulnerable communities, that help the elderly, that help all of us when we retire and we need medical care and we need Social Security. They've admitted that their policy is just end everything it is that Americans love about what the government does for us. They're going to end it. And people are going to vote for that. People are going to vote. Immigrants are going to vote to deport themselves. Elderly are going to vote to end their health care, end their Social Security. These are wild times, man.
The cowboy hat is getting empty here. Migrant flights is the next one that was pulled out of there. DeSantis, for those of you who do not know, started the migrant flights with sending some 50 migrants from the Texas border to Martha's Vineyard. They weren't even his migrants. You know this story by now, but what do you have for us on migrant flights? What updates do you have?
First things first, I'm going to get through this as quickly as I can because there's a lot of news on it. Governor Ron DeSantis is a bully. This is a guy who beats up on vulnerable people like felons who've been told they're allowed to vote and then arrest them for voting. A guy who beats up on immigrants who not only did he not remove immigrants from the state of Florida that help our economy go around and help our agriculture, specifically economy, go around and
help
in
with hurricane cleanup.
He picked up immigrants. Is under investigation, in fact, for human trafficking in Texas, sent them to another state using taxpayer dollars, COVID-19 recovery funds, in fact. And now we need them back in the state of Florida to help with hurricane recovery, as you mentioned. But his top aides, Governor Ron DeSantis' top aides, played key roles in planning and executing this scheme, which the Herald describes as a controversial migrant flight program. And the federal government and one particular Texas sheriff is calling alleged human trafficking. But you had people at the highest levels of
This happened at the beginning on PTI. Wilbon and Kornheiser would respect the bell, and it would be that awkward. And the producers would have to say, you can keep talking through the bell. It doesn't have to be a Pavlovian thing where you immediately stop chasing. So finish your thought.
I want people to go to the Miami Herald, which has done some extraordinary reporting on this based upon the public records and their own investigations. Nick Niemas, Sarah Blasky, Mary Ellen Klass. But I want to just read you this lead from their latest story. We've all heard of Perla, the mysterious woman who disappeared, who nobody can find, who was in charge of this scheme and given not just public money, but cash. Listen to this lead. The final of 3 cash payments, $700 total, was left under a chunk of broken concrete behind the East Terrell Hills location of a San Antonio barbecue chain. It was September 20th, the day everything fell apart. Perla Huerta, a 43-year-old former U.S. Army counterintelligence agent working for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, got out her phone and opened the secure messaging app Signal. Quote, "The money is going to be in the Bill Miller restaurant near your house," Huerta wrote in Spanish to a 27-year-old Venezuelan immigrant named Emmanuel. Quote, "It's going to be behind the dumpster, outside in a white envelope," end quote. She added 2 photos of the area, using her finger to circle the exact location in a thick magenta line. Recruited by Huerta from a warren of tents behind a San Antonio McDonald's, Emmanuel had been an ace in the hole for DeSantis' secret program to charter flights to redirect Texas migrants to northern cities, a figurative poke in the eye to Democratic strongholds, a friendly and familiar face to the unprecedented number of Venezuelan migrants passing legally through Texas. Emmanuel quickly became a top recruiter of passengers, probably second only to Huerta herself. And it goes on from there. This is how this operation, this human trafficking operation, was run by the governor of the state of Florida, leaving envelopes of cash behind dumpsters of Texas restaurants.
To be fair, that's always how I've done my human trafficking. I mean, it's you don't want to leave too much of a paper trail.
No, Roy told me that he picks up his money from a dumpster behind the Clevelander.
Absolutely.
Miami-Dade Jails has been selected from the white cowboy hat. I still don't know where we got a white cowboy hat, why we have a white cowboy hat.
I think we borrowed it from the Proud Boys.
It is a
Renee Garcia, I think, donated it.
Flimsy
who I understand
hat.
is also bilingual.
Stay on topic.
I'm sorry, what are we
Miami-Dade
talking
Jails.
about? Proud Boys is kind of on topic for the day. Will be anyway.
Will be later in the show when we have a guest, an author who has written extensively about extremism and Proud Boys. That'll be in about 10 minutes from now.
If I can keep this
I
moving.
doubt you will.
Go 2 times. Listen to this 2 times. More outstanding work from Doug Hanks and David Ovalle at the Miami Herald. Jail reform has been a top priority for Miami-Dade Mayor Daniela Levine Cava since taking office 2 years ago, they write. But the county's corrections department still suffers from poor management and a shoddy safety record after 11 inmate deaths this year, 4 of which were suicides. Since 2013, Miami-Dade County jails have been under a federal consent decree, which means that the federal government is monitoring what is supposed to be reforms, an improvement plan that is under the supervision of a federal court monitor. So in an August 12th report, Susan McCampbell, who has been the Department of Justice's independent monitor since the start of the case, said she was discouraged by continued management failures in the jail. Quote, "The ongoing harm to inmates is due to the county's failure to competently act. After all these years, this is more than just a concern. It is alarming." She said she's so frustrated with the county's lack of progress that she's quitting her job at the end of this year. She said the changes that are now finally being called for had already been suggested by her team in her various reports throughout the years. At a hearing before a federal judge who's helping to monitor the progress here, which is non-existent, she asked, did nobody read it? Did nobody take it seriously? And the U.S. District Court Judge, Beth Bloom, said, I'm frustrated that it has taken as long as it has. I am deeply concerned. So here is a pet issue of Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who I've invited on this show time and time again to defend her record of incompetence and failure since she took office 2 years ago. Here she is being called out by a federal judge and by an independent monitor who says that this system that houses at any given time 4,500 inmates, okay, is unsafe and is poorly managed, and this reform has been incompetently handled because Miami.
Miami Beach police lawsuit. We are getting down to the very bottom of the cowboy hat. There's only one more after this. Which Miami Beach police lawsuit? There are. You're going to have to narrow it down. Which one are we talking about here?
So we talked pretty extensively about this as well. A couple summers ago, the city of Miami Beach passed this insanely unconstitutional Jim Crow law that talked about interfering with police and you have to be a certain distance. You can't interfere with with any of the police business. But all that happened a few weeks after it was passed, all that happened was they arrested 13 black people, 8 of which were just at a safe distance recording the police legally, a constitutionally protected act with their cell phones. One woman was roughed up, pepper sprayed, and she is now suing to overturn this unconstitutional law. This was so egregious, by the way, that Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, who has never charged a police officer with an on-duty killing during her entire 30 years in office, was forced, because video showed this abuse and showed that the police lied in their reports. She charged 5 cops, including 3 with felonies in these related incidents. By the time they got caught falsely arresting a third black man, but the Miami Beach has never defended this insane ordinance because they don't want to take it off the books, and they also don't want it to be declared unconstitutional. So now someone has finally challenged it, and hopefully we will see some change.
Back up. Back up. Back up.
Mason for no reason. Mason us for no reason. Look. Don't rub it. You good, friend?
And finally, I can't believe we finally gotten to her actually charging. That's what it took for her to charge police officers, was undeniable video proof that they are trying to eliminate by arresting people who provide undeniable video proof.
And what's funny now is at the city of Miami Beach, they have body cams. So body cams, which have been incredibly helpful, by the way, in clearing officers who are falsely accused of abuse, which happens when people are trying to get out of trouble. So it protects police officers. And then, of course, they're arresting people for filming them when the police officers are, in fact, on their chest filming the same thing. They're basically filming the crimes that, in this case, the police were committing and ultimately got arrested and charged with.
Virginia Key Beach Park. This story will not go away, and the developments are not great because they want that land.
They want that land. It's always a real estate hustle, Dan. And what just happened is, with a complicit black commissioner, the only black commissioner in the city of Miami, the City of Miami Commission hijacked the Virginia Key Beach Board. This is a group of majority black community leaders who have been in charge of stewards of Miami's historic black beach, dating back from the Jim Crow era, We had Uncle Luke on to talk about this was the beach that his parents took him to because this was the only beach where black people were allowed. They've been talking about for 15 years now building a museum there in this historically protected, federally protected area. They have not moved fast enough, I guess, for the commissioners. That's what they claim. And the commissioners have taken it over. So they have purged the black leadership from the historic Black Beach Board. And now black community leaders have written a letter to Miami Mayor Ponzi Postalita, Francis Suarez, that opens very cleverly. Dear Mr. Suarez, you asked, how can I help? The black community in Miami needs help now, and you have the power to do so with a simple signature. We need you to veto the recently passed ordinance that would change the composition of the board of the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust from a board that reflects the voice of the black community to a board of the city commissioners. I neglected that. Not only did they eliminate the majority black board, they appointed themselves, the city commissioners, in charge of this beach, in charge of the money that comes along with it from the feds and from the state in order to preserve it and potentially build a museum there. But Suarez has declined a request from black leaders to veto controversial legislation before. In April, the NAACP asked him to veto changes to the city's voting map that moved more than 100 black households from District 2 into District 4, which critics argued accurately diluted the black community's political power. We talked about this in the historic West Grove. Suarez responded that the map that was approved was the only politically viable option that would pass the commission. That is a lie. That is a bullshit excuse. And at the risk of going full Kanye, Francis Suarez does not care about black people because they do not pay him. Francis Suarez does not act in the best interest of this community and its constituents. His constituents are rich people who pay him both publicly and under the table to represent their best interests. So this is a man who, while he is mayor of one of the poorest cities in the country, is on the take from some of the richest people in the country.
Roy fell asleep at the Inception doom sound. That was, I know the audience was with me saying that's 90 seconds too long from
I thought he fell asleep on Kanye.
I don't know what happened there.
That's automatically. I fell asleep on Kanye.
But what happened? Where was the sound, Roy? Where was the governor? You just forgot? You stopped listening? What happened?
All
right, good work. Andy Campbell is the author of We Are Proud Boys, How a Right-Wing Street Gang Ushered in a New Era of American Extremism. He joins us next. Andy Campbell is an investigative reporter and editor. He specializes in covering extremism, misinformation, their intersection with national politics. He's got a book, We Are Proud Boys, How a Right-Wing Street Gang Ushered in a New Era of American Extremism. Thank you for joining us, Andy. I know Billy is finding, as I am, really disconcerting the way the Proud Boys are making their way into Miami government and accruing more and more power. So just give us, as a starting point here, some of the origins of why you did this book and what it is you found while doing this book.
Right. I am a crime reporter for HuffPost, and I was covering increasing acts of violence at MAGA events surrounding Trump's rise across the country. And the Proud Boys sort of stuck out from, these groups of weird sort of Nazi online groups that were showing up at MAGA events, because the Proud Boys didn't want to be anonymous. They wanted to show their face. They wanted to talk to the press. They were proud of the violence that they were committing. And so we looked at that as super concerning. Another issue is that the Proud Boys are not only pushed into the world as Trump's sort of fighting force in the street, but they're also, like you said, becoming a very, very political machine. And through their relationships with the GOP, especially there in Miami, they have been able to normalize their political violence throughout the country.
How stunned were you, if at all, that Trump during a national debate would speak directly to them and tell them to stand down and stand by?
Right. When Trump said, stand back, stand by, you could argue that Trump can't even put a sentence together and that he didn't mean what he said. But the Proud Boys took it as marching orders, and they've taken his words as marching orders for their 6-year parade of violence. they started preparing for what they described as civil war on January 6th. They started gathering money. They started recruiting again, and they started gathering weapons and materials for what they saw as their last stand for Trump on January 6th. And I've spoken to people in Trump's inner circle who embrace and celebrate the Proud Boys, and certainly people like Roger Stone, Trump's top confidant, and their connection to Florida politics has totally embraced them and given them access to Trump's inner circle leading up to January 6th.
Andy, ideologically, what's the origin here? What's the beef? Are they incels? Are they these types of movements usually stem out of some kind of time period historically of disaffection. But these guys a lot of them are middle, upper class. I'm not exactly sure what they're so pissed off about. Is it that they can't get laid, or like what is ideologically, where are they coming from? What are their goals? What do they want?
You hit some of the points. Certainly, they aren't getting laid, but these guys are misogynist, white supremacist at their core. Gavin McInnes wanted to build them out to go out and fight against the so-called leftist threat, where crusty old GOP guys aren't going to get out in the street. And so right from the beginning, Gavin McInnes built them out of his audience on his reactionary talk show, and he's pelting them with racist tirades and misogynist tirades. He wanted them to, quote, venerate the housewife. He claims that women are responsible for the downfall of masculinity, and they need to get out there and fight back against the feminization of American men. They have a whole bunch of weird rules dedicated to that too.
Oh, right. Let's talk. Listen, the only reason you're here is because I wanted to ask about the regulation of masturbation. Can we talk about the regulation of masturbation amongst these Proud Girls? What is it?
Right.
What are the rules here?
There are 4 degrees or ranks in the Proud Boys. The fourth and most violent is that they have to commit a significant act of political violence for the cause being GOP causes. But the second degree is easily the most embarrassing, and it has 2 rules. The first is an initiation where you're surrounded by other Proud Boys and you are punched repeatedly until you can name 5 breakfast cereals. Now, it's ridiculous on its face, and it's really embarrassing. If you go on YouTube, you can see this initiation ceremony.
Yeah, Dan has a similar thing here on the show.
I'm sure. But these guys are naming, C-tier breakfast cereals while guys are giving them sort of weak-willed punches. Super embarrassing. It's sort of rooted in sort of, that testosterone is going to fly high when you are, getting punched by other Proud Boys.
Going,
totally
Honey Smacks, Fruit Loops. What are they? What is that?
But they're like
Flakes.
Kicks.
What is happening?
Raisin Bran Frosted Flakes, terrible C-list cereals.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch. What is happening?
Exactly. And so, but the second part of the second degree is that you cannot masturbate unless you are within several feet of a woman. Now, you can imagine what kind of ridiculous and awkward situations that leads Proud Boys into, but it's rooted in ridiculous science that if you don't masturbate, your testosterone levels are going to fly. And it's like that old sports mantra, like don't have sex or masturbate before the big game. You're going to be able to tackle better. These guys really believe that they're going to fight better if they don't masturbate.
Now the Louis C.K. thing makes a lot more sense. Maybe he was just a Proud Boy. You referred to their...
You didn't even have a question ready. You just had a Louis C.K. joke ready.
No, I said...
There was no question. You had
no question ready. The question was regulation of masturbation. I just wanted the rhyme.
You just wanted to... You accused Louis C.K. of something. I didn't
accuse him. He admitted to masturbating in front of women.
I mean... You said maybe he's a Proud Boy.
I don't know. But that would explain his behavior, at least.
It would not explain his behavior.
So you referred to them fighting this sort of leftist threat, but all of these threats seem to be fictitious. Like there doesn't seem to be a real threat to them, to their existence. What is the issue with what is the beef with these white men? I just don't get it. They seem to have it pretty okay in this country right now.
Absolutely. And their grievances follow the GOP's grievances, many of which are total boogeymen, that immigrants are coming to get you, that women and drag queens are coming to get you.
CRT, sure enough, right? CRT, all this they make shit up.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they've been outside school board meetings where CRT is being discussed. They've been outside drag queen story hours at public libraries, bringing intimidation and violence to these events. These guys truly believe that they are out there fighting for the GOP's grievances, and all of their relationships have shown in the GOP have shown that the GOP embraces this and sees them as this political fighting force for Trump. And that's exactly what they wanted.
How big are they and how strong are they?
Strong is a funny word there, but they are in the thousands, I think. And a lot of people ask me, well, why do I have to be worried about these guys? They're not going to come to my doorstep, although they have been known to make house calls against people that they don't like. But really, their ability lies in their coalition building. It was a Proud Boy, a lot of people forget, who organized Unite the Right, the Nazi rally in 2017. And the Proud Boys, following Trump's words, were the ones who the Justice Department believes organized the January 6th insurrection. So their ability to sort of bring everyone together under this banner and veil of patriotism to fight against the leftist boogeyman is where their threat lies. And certainly, like you said, the boogeyman doesn't really exist. But they've used these boogeymen to justify all of the GOP's violent and anti-immigrant rhetoric.
And in fact, one of the former leaders of the Proud Boys pled guilty this month to seditious conspiracy, a rarely used or heard of charge in this country, and now essentially an acknowledgement from a Proud Boys leader that they were, in fact, to some extent behind the January 6th sedition.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a super interesting trial because you have several top level Proud Boys who are going to be testifying against one another. This is going to be a street gang, a political street gang who's testifying against one another in this trial. You haven't seen that in a long time. And you're going to see, I think, through those testimonies, a bigger connection between the Proud Boys and politicians, including, like I said, Roger Stone, who gave them their seat of power there in Miami.
And they, in fact, they have sort of a tradition of rolling on each other, informing to police, snitching as the kids call it. Enrique Tarrio is a pretty significant character down here in South Florida, Afro-Cuban from the little Havana neighborhood. He also helped to head up, I think, Latinos for Trump, a grassroots organization. He was the Florida state director. But interestingly, Proud Boys is known as a male chauvinist, white supremacist, organization, but yet you do have people of color like this guy in there. Is this like a Clayton Bigsby situation? Like what exactly is that dynamic?
Clayton, we don't have Hispanics named Clayton. I understand Chappelle's show. Carlos Bigsby.
Carlito Bigsby.
Carlito.
I'm glad you brought it up because a lot of people ask, well, how could they be racist if they have people of color in their ranks? And first of all, let's get it straight. They are racist. Gavin McInnes said that anybody can join the Proud Boys so long as they agree and accept that white men have an outsized role in the success of the West. So there's a white supremacy is at their core, right? But they do have people of color. They're gathering under the banner of political violence. They think we can go out there and fight and get away with it because people think that we're patriotic. But the few people of color like Enrique that they constantly hold aloft in front of the gang as evidence that they're not white supremacists. And so his Cuban roots sort of show that they're not white supremacists. And when I spoke to Gavin McInnes for my book, he's constantly bringing up like members who have black wives in emails to me, without any prompt whatsoever. They are constantly sort of pushing these guys forward and holding them aloft. But let's be clear. They are out there in the street standing alongside neo-Nazis. I mean, the political violence aspect creates really strange bedfellows for sure.
Andy, how did we go from having to hide behind a hood to this?
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember the Klan didn't dissolve in its power in the late 20s because the nation rebuffed them. They dissolved in power because so many people agreed with that ideology that they just weren't really needed as a political force anymore. And so you are right to draw the connection between the Klan and the Proud Boys, because they have political power. They have support from the GOP and a swath of America, and they're out there attacking people for ideological reasons and for white supremacist reasons. And so we have to decide as a country going into the election whether we want to accept extremist leaders and politicians who have ties to extremists like the Proud Boys, and whether we want Proud Boys candidates in office. I mean, you guys in Miami right now have a Republican committee that has like 6 Proud Boys members on it right now, and they don't see that as an issue. So we are deciding right now whether we want this extremism at our leadership level.
Yeah, and as you just said, and we've covered it on this podcast extensively, possibly now over half a dozen known or admitted Proud Boys on the Miami Republican Executive Committee, embraced by super Proud Boy Rene Garcia, who is the head of the Miami Republicans and a Miami-Dade County commissioner. But this has been kind of the genius and the hard work of the Republicans all over the country, which is to understand that all politics is local, to know that if you're going to really influence day-to-day life and policy, you need to start in local government and school board races, et cetera. But now what we're seeing here is, whereas the country sort of purged the Klan as a cancer, there is a legitimate embrace by one of the only 2 major political parties in this country of the Proud Boys. And I guess my question is, the Proud Boys do kind of represent the base of the Republican Party at this point, don't they? I mean, certainly in Miami-Dade County, they do.
Hey, the spirit of January 6th hasn't gone anywhere. The Proud Boys have ramped up their attacks. I don't know if you saw this, but after January 6th, Ann Coulter, who's like a slimy media pundit, if you don't know her, writes a blog titled "Thank God for the Proud Boys," where she brags about using them as her security and sort of celebrates them as, you know, a patriotic political force in this really sexual, gross way. But this is a Republican Party that has embraced extremism, embraced the bigotry. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump are going after Jews publicly now, right? This is a full spectrum of extremism that's being pushed as the Republicans' main talking points now. And so you don't see the Proud Boys going away. In fact, throughout the summer, they have been mobilizing on Tucker Carlson and Trump's rants to drag queen story hours and Roe v. Wade demonstrations. They haven't stopped, and certainly the Republican Party hasn't rebuffed them ever.
Well, I'm taking aim with my space lasers. I'll tell you that right now. I want to read a very distressing passage from the press notes from your publisher on your new book. As he exposes the group's noxious culture and strange rituals, he, meaning you, reveals how the ultimate project of the Proud Boys to desensitize Americans to political violence has succeeded entirely, culminating with Republicans calling the January 6th insurrection, quote, legitimate political discourse, end quote. The bizarre, frightening story of the Proud Boys reveals the playbook they have created for domestic extremism, giving us the necessary insight to push back against radicalism in America before it swallows our democracy whole. So other than shining a spotlight on this terrifying group of right-wing violent extremists who we've seen in action, and just because they failed on January 6th, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again, and they certainly are. What is the answer here? What is the solution? How do you push back? How do we push back on this?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to communities that have been under siege by these and other groups for years, and people want to see an entire culture shift. I mean, you have law enforcement who are members of the Proud Boys in Chicago. They just announced last week that they're not going to penalize an officer who's a member of the Proud Boys right now. So you have law enforcement that they have ties with. You have an entire media ecosystem behind them. Fox News loves them. They have right-wing podcasters behind them. And you also have the embrace by people like Roger Stone behind them. And so you have to have all of these elements come together to rebuff them. Roger Stone admitted to me in an interview that he'd been advising these guys for years on how to become more political and not just look like a fight gang or a hate group. And so you have not only do we need a culture shift, but people need to fight back in the polls. I think 1 in 2 Americans are going to see an election denier on their ballots this year.
Jesus.
And so people have to decide through voting whether they want, people at the leadership level who are tied to the Proud Boys, but also, people have to accept and support the activism going on locally, because it's activists, not law enforcement, who came together with the dossiers that led to all these hundreds of January 6th prosecutions. It's local activists, not law enforcement, who came up with all of the dossiers that led to a $25 million lawsuit against the architects of Unite the Right. And so it's very local, like you said. It's people need to vote locally, and they need to activate locally.
And you talked about operatives, GOP operatives, helping them, I guess, fix their optics, looking a little bit more political. But make no mistake, this is the kind of thing we see in third world banana republics that we sort of make fun of other countries for.
I think you guys might be sort of more cynical than me. Maybe I'm naive. I just can't believe this is a conversation, any of this, in 2022 America.
Well,
and that's knowing and seeing what I've seen the last 6 years. I still can't believe that this is as strong as it is.
But that's the issue. We have a political party in this country that now has a militant wing, that now has an organized street gang that will commit political violence at its behest. I mean, this is exactly the kind of shit that we look down south and we look across the world and thumb our noses at and go. I think Donald Trump called them shithole countries actually at one point. And so right. We're no better at this point. I mean, like that, because you have a political party now, one of only 2 major political parties, unfortunately, in this country, that has a fucking army that will commit political violence on the streets.
And the concerning part is that army, isn't just the Proud Boys anymore. It's regular everyday Americans. You used to see only violence at MAGA rallies or BLM rallies, but now you're seeing it everyday American life. Like I said, you're seeing it at school board meetings and abortion clinics, and everyday Americans are joining Nazis or joining Proud Boys in the street there. And again, there has been zero rebuffing from the GOP. And so we have to somehow take this violence, MAGA, out of the sails of the Republican Party this election, if we have any chance of this becoming not normal.
The name of the book, We Are Proud Boys, How a Right-Wing Street Gang Ushered in a New Era of American Extremism. Andy, thank you for being on the show with us. We appreciate it. Another uplifting punctuation.
I don't know.
Because Miami.
I don't know if thank you is what you
another
mean.
Inspiring end.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
To our show here. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everybody. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry that we've ended another depressing week this way.
Stand back and stand by.
See you later.
Cocaines.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Good night and good cuck.